colleagues and friends, it really is a delight and a source of great pride, I think, for all the staff of the National Security College to see you here tonight. A couple of thoughts before we begin. Firstly, of course, an acknowledgement of country, acknowledging that we're having this conversation on the traditional lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, and pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Also, I think to acknowledge and thank some of our key guests here today. There are too many genuinely very important people for the National Security College for me to mention all of you, and it's tremendous to have, for example, officials from right across government. It's tremendous to have staff at every level who made every contribution to the history of the college over the past 15 years here. But a few names, I think, worthy of special mention and acknowledgement. I'm very pleased that we have with us Ellie Lawson, who's the chair of my advisory board, kind of important, Deputy Secretary National Security in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and I'm sure reflecting the importance that government at every level place on the relationship with the college. Heather Cook is here, of course, the Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. It was a great pleasure for us to host Heather recently for opening the books on the challenge of transnational and serious crime for Australia. Heather, you've been a long champion for the college, so thank you. Michael Lestrange, the founding head of the National Security College. A real pleasure, Michael, to see you here. And of course, when I commenced at the National Security College at the beginning of 2015, Professor Lestrange was not only a very profound guide to the opportunities and the challenges of the institution, but left very strong foundations for the college. So thank you very much for being here, Michael. Professor Joan Leach, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic of the Australian National University, here representing, I know, the Vice-Chancellor, the Interim Vice-Chancellor who couldn't be here this evening. Thank you, Joan, a member of our board and a leader of the academic community, and the embedding of the National Security College with the Australian National University has certainly been part of our success over those 15 years. Gai Brodman, who not only is a distinguished advisor for the college, but is also co-founder of the Women and National Security Alliance, and in her capacity of chair of the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, has been a great ally, partner, champion for the college over the years. Tom Rogers, the former Australian Electoral Commissioner, and now one of our distinguished advisors. Also Mark Crosweller, former DG of Emergency Management Australia, another of our distinguished advisors. And the list goes on. And of course, our panellists, who Sal will introduce in a little bit more depth later on. It's also great to see alumni of the college here, including some of our former academic students who've graduated to go on to careers in the Australian government, public service, up on the Hill, advisors right across the political spectrum. And I note, for example, that Dr. Will Stoltz, Senior Advisor to the Leader of the Opposition, is joining us. So many other individuals who've made a profound, unique difference to the life and the history of the college. So I promised myself that this would be a short, long speech, covering a lot of ground because the National Security College has covered a lot of territory in its 15-year history. And that is thanks again to the contributions of so many staff, alumni, students, friends, supporters, champions. I think it's been the culture of the National Security College that has been key to our success. Trust is the word that I always come back to when I'm asked to explain what is the secret recipe to the achievements of the National Security College. We've been, and we are, in an extraordinarily privileged and trusted position, very much at that intersection of policy, of academia, of independent expertise, of practitioner expertise, of the community, of industry, of Australia's international relationships. Very easy to do this job badly, and I think that colleagues strive every day to ensure that we're worthy of the trust that all of those stakeholders place in the National Security College. So the success, the survival, the sustainability of the college is part of what I'd like to celebrate here tonight. But I want also for us to think a little about how the past informs the present, informs the future, and informs the core mission of the college, which continues to be contributing to Australia's security through the lifting of capability, not only across government and the Australian public service, but across Australia as well, because however you look at our strategic environment today, it's very clear that Australia is only going to be able to protect and advance its interests if we harness all of our capability in a federated democratic framework within the public service, but well beyond it as well. So you've all helped make this small organisation make a big difference, I would argue. Now, it's easy to take a quick tour of the work we do at the National Security College. Many of you are familiar with the short courses that are at the core of our business, the so-called executive and professional development, which is a way of saying that by last reckoning, around 20,000 people, mostly Australian government officials, but also in states and territories, in partner nations in the Indo-Pacific region, have undertaken short course executive and professional development education with the college in the 15 years since we've been established. So that is, I think, really an outstanding measure of the influence, the impact, the value that the college provides. The academic program of the National Security College, which some years ago we sharpened to ensure it was deeply relevant to the 18 or sometimes 19 agencies of government that are stakeholders in the college that have invested in this relationship between the Commonwealth and the university. And by last count, more than 500 students have graduated with our postgrad degrees, our masters, our grad cert, 19 PhD completions. It's fair to say that our students, one way or another, and we don't all speak with one voice, are the best kind of agents of influence for the National Security College in government, in society around the world as well, including students overseas. I was just reflecting this afternoon to a friend and colleague who receives regular correspondence from one of our students in Indonesia, for example, about the influence of her study upon her career. Our engagement with the community, and that goes to our policy work, our communications work, our engagement work. The National Security Podcast, I think one of the great success stories of the college in recent years, and indeed the brainchild of one of our staff, and I don't know if Chris Farnham is here this evening, an official in government, but as a junior staff member put the audacious idea to me of a podcast, which of course I rejected, but eventually we got there. Now more than 200,000 downloads a year, and a very trusted voice in the policy debate in Australia. Our publications, a small but quality stable of trusted publications, our policy options papers, our futures papers, our occasional papers, trying to push the agenda, encourage the agenda in a trusted and positive way on issues ranging from critical infrastructure to foreign interference to cyber security, a lot of the issues really where the college and its ability to curate trusted conversations with government has been at the leading edge of developing and encouraging a mature Australian policy debate, working with government to get what government needs done, but doing so with our academic integrity intact. Dozens of dialogues, hundreds of courses, the list could go on. But of course, numbers don't tell the whole story. Recently, I took a journey into territory both familiar and confrontingly strange. I went to Washington, DC, with our senior executive course, our flagship course. Now, of course, today's Washington is not the one that many of us thought we knew, and the brutal directness of the National Security Strategy published a few days ago, I guess, only reinforces that observation. But of course, the core mission of the National Security College is knowledge, opening eyes, lifting capability through raising awareness. So we need to understand the convulsions and the complexities of the United States at this time. But one of the most memorable conversations on that visit was actually with an Australian, with a certain Kevin Rudd, Ambassador Rudd, Dr. Rudd, former Prime Minister Rudd, who of course was and is the founder of the National Security College, advised in that endeavour, and I think in that great initiative by Duncan Lewis, again, one of the really the parents of the National Security College. Duncan can't be here this evening. Understandably, a regimental 50th anniversary trumps a college 15th anniversary, but nonetheless, Kevin Rudd reinforced to our group the logic behind the establishment of the National Security College to build a true national security community through breaking down the silos between agencies, through education, through building a community of practice, through building the bonds and the leadership networks that really are reflected today right across Canberra, right across Australia. And so in that regard, the National Security College was an idea ahead of its time, and I think many of us have worked very hard to bring that vision to fulfilment, to adapt it and anticipate the challenges of the time. And I think part of the secret of that success has been our staffing model, the fact that we have a hybrid staff, a hybrid culture. We have an academic team, we have professionals within the university environment, we have an ever-expanding network of affiliates and advisors and so forth, but also we rely very heavily on secondments out of government. And I think that a big contribution of the college and to the college has been that secondment model. It's often a fascinating cultural adventure, of course, to blend 19 or so agencies of government in one organisation with an academic culture, with a professional culture, engaging with the media, engaging with business, engaging with civil society. But when it works, it's magic, as some of our more public-facing events like the Securing Our Future conference last year demonstrated. And of course, the challenges of the times, and I'll hand over to our panel on this in a moment, have been precisely what this model has been designed to meet. In the decade since I've been at the helm of the National Security College, like all of you, I've seen Australia's strategic landscape rapidly change. I would like to think that some of our work has anticipated that change, helped the nation prepare for that change. The collapse of the boundaries between what is an international security issue and what is a domestic issue, between technology and people, between economics and security. We've been in the midst of that conversation, and I like to think we've been helpful to policy along the way. And so it is that 19 agencies of government at any given time have invested in us, and it's not only the traditional security community. As I said, it's defence all the way through, for example, to the Australian Electoral Commission. The college has also set an international standard in that time. And it is, I guess, flattering that our dear friends and kindred spirits in the United Kingdom created some years ago the College for National Security, which interestingly is modelled on the National Security College, and it's a fantastic partnership we've developed there. As we expand our international network, we also discover best practice elsewhere. So, for example, we're building a relationship with the National Defence Course in Finland, which has been doing what we do since 1961, but extending it into all elements of society. So there's an aspiration for the next 15 years of the National Security College. Look, the early years of the college were challenging, but as I said, I was really respectful of the strong foundations that were laid not only in the university environment, but through the model of the executive and professional development that we do. When I joined, times were changing, a more confronting strategic environment, and I would like to think that many of the big ideas we're going to discuss tonight, whether it's looking at the Indo-Pacific strategic environment, the foreign interference challenge, economic coercion, cybersecurity, critical infrastructure protection, the need to engage the broader community in a national conversation about security. In so many of those ideas, I think there was a valuable contribution made here at the National Security College through that agency of trust that has been really our signature. But we also seek to anticipate change. Our Futures Hub team, for example, an initiative we set up about a decade ago, but which has really gone from strength to strength, has looked at everything from pandemics, which we kind of talked about as a what if this were to happen about 7 or 8 years ago, supply chains, AI, the return of geopolitics and so forth. And it's fascinating that the Futures Hub now is advising state governments as well as the federal government in Australia. Themes of preparedness and resilience that are so much on the agenda today, we've been working on for some time at the college. Even, dare I say it, the word mobilisation, thinking about how our nation would come together in a crisis, how our nation would prepare for shocks in the international system. We've been consistently working on those issues in a trusted and quiet way over many years. And before I conclude, the theme and the concept of inclusion has been absolutely key to the work of the National Security College over those 15 years of our history. Since 2010, when Kevin Rudd and Duncan Lewis had a conversation, I think I'm told on a C-130 flying into Kandahar about wouldn't it be a good idea to have this college, we've seen the college build ever-widening circles of inclusion through and beyond the Australian national security community. A highlight of our work over the last decade has been the number of conferences, podcasts, scholarships, mentorship programs to build the strength of women in national security in Australia, but of course it's gone beyond, far beyond gender, cultural and linguistic diversity, engagement with First Nations. The college has built all of these into its programs, all of these into its aspiration for an Australia that truly has a national security community that represents the contemporary nation. The expanding mandate is also, or expanding remit of the college also has looked beyond Canberra. And I think if I were to chart some turning points in the history of the college, one of which was in fact the way that we turned crisis into opportunity with the COVID pandemic, which frankly did pose a very serious threat to our financial model. And I should thank and acknowledge here Caroline Miller, who as Deputy Secretary, Prime Minister and Cabinet fought the good fight for our financial sustainability during that time. But also we began to realise that as an institution we should not solely be facing the public service. And so in recent years we've worked to engage Parliament. We now have a very healthy and sustainable program of parliamentary engagement. And in particular, we've worked to engage the community beyond Canberra, beyond the public service. So I'll leave you with a few thoughts about our Community Consultations Initiative. We've released a few preliminary findings from that fascinating project today, and that data is available on our website. We'll share it with you. It's a quiet way into a national conversation about what the Australian community actually thinks about national security. We'll have more to say on this early next year. Please put in your diaries 24-25 March for our second Securing Our Future conference. But a few headlines there to think about. Firstly, there is growing anxiety in the Australian community about the full spectrum of security threats, and I believe that our data quantifies that anxiety. A lot of that anxiety is focused on emerging threats related to technology, related to economics, related to the environment, related to disinformation, related to foreign interference, but not all of it. There's also some focus on military risks. On the other hand, we've found some positive signs of convergence in community thinking. I think that's incredibly important at a time where division, disruption, extremism have been so clearly polarising the community in Australia. A very clear majority of the Australian community places a premium on the idea of peaceful and safe communities as really a unifying force in our policy settings. And I hope that is a thought that government, parliament, leaders right across Australia can take away from our research. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to our outstanding panel. I think that as we think about the next 15 years of the National Security College, we need to be thinking about the much broader range of insights that we've been seeking to harness in recent times, whether it's next generation thinkers or whether it's experienced practitioners from across the national security community who, now that they are liberated from government, have some very valuable things to say. So at that point, I'm going to hand over. Thank you.